compared to today. A slice of sunshine moves south ahead of this weather front, which brings the rain into northern England, northern and western Wales by the afternoon. Brighter skies, but colder air follows for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Blustery showers, with those showers falling as snow over the hills of Scotland. And that sets the scene for Thursday and Friday. It's increasingly windy. Those winds coming from the north will bring increasingly cold weather, and we'll see some wintry stuff with snow primarily over northern hills.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning, I'm Tamsin Roberts. Here are the latest headlines. At least 45 people, including 12 children, have died in a bus crash in western Bulgaria. 7 people who managed to escape are in hospital in stable condition. The incident happened on a highway about 45 kilometres west of the capital Sofia in the early hours of this morning. The Bulgarian officials say the cause is unknown. MPs have narrowly voted in favour of cost-saving reforms to the government's social care policy. They won the vote by 26, with 87 Conservative MPs rebelling or abstaining. The changes mean only personal contributions will count towards an £86,000 cap. State benefits won't be included. Some backbench MPs say poorer people may have to sell their homes to cover costs. The Requiem Mass of Sir David Amess, the Conservative MP who was killed during a constituency meeting, will be held at Westminster Cathedral this morning. The Archbishop of Westminster will lead the service alongside a representative from the Vatican who will deliver a special message from Pope Francis. The service follows the private funeral held in Southend yesterday. The Brit Awards are going gender neutral, with the male and female categories being scrapped. Instead, prizes will be given to Artist of the Year and International Artist of the Year. Sam Smith, who won the Critics' Choice Prize in 2014 and identifies as gender neutral, was among those pushing for the move. Well, I'll have more on all those stories for you at the top of the hour.
Good morning, you're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys, and we've got a show full of all of today's big stories and lots of discussion and opinion on the issues you're talking about. So here's what's on the menu today.
Yes, well, Prime Minister Boris Johnson is under pressure. He gave a rambling speech about Peppa Pig, along with rather strange car engine impressions in front of the country's business leaders yesterday. Some Tory MPs are said to be increasingly worried about the Prime Minister. We'll be discussing that very shortly.
Yes, and new details are emerging after an SUV hit pedestrians during a Christmas parade in Wisconsin. Police have named a suspect and will be speaking to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, about these latest developments.
Also on the programme, MPs backed a change to the government's social care reforms last night. This is despite opponents warning that poor households would end up paying more for their care. There was a bit of a Tory rebellion as well. We're going to get stuck into exactly what this could mean for your social care.
Yes, we've got all of that coming up across the until midday, and get in touch with your views as usual. GBviews at gbnews.uk, and we'll be getting to those as well throughout the show. But first, Patrick asks whether Boris Johnson is the man you thought he was.
Yes, I'd like to start today's monologue with a question to you. I normally like to make a big, bold statement, but actually I'm throwing this one over to you. I'm divulging myself of any responsibility whatsoever. I'm asking whether or not you have got Boris buyer's remorse. If you voted for him, do you feel like you got the man you voted for? If he was a product, would you now be tearing through your drawers looking for the receipt so you could take him back to the shop and get a refund? Boris Johnson is well and truly under the cosh. He rode in on a ticket of get Brexit done. And he did that, to be fair. Whether you like the Brexit deal or not, the fact is that Boris Johnson ended years of stalemate, dither, delay and, frankly, the subversion of democracy. I think there was a real chance that if we hadn't got Brexit done when we did, it might not have actually happened at all. It's like couples who get engaged and then set a wedding date years in advance. Usually something crops up and that wedding never happens. He had the wind well and truly sucked out of his sails when COVID hit, and let's be honest, the whole world was in total chaos for quite a while. I remember that time when Boris was in intensive care, Dominic Cummings was seen legging it out of Downing Street, Hancock got the Rona, Whitty was floored by it, cases and deaths were spiralling, the soundtrack to our lives was just the howling of ambulance sirens. There was genuinely about a week-long period where I thought maybe the world was about to end. It's worth noting that if we lived in continental Europe right now, there's every chance that we'd be fronting up to the reality of mandatory vaccinations, more lockdowns, vaccine passports and, frankly, violent authoritarianism. So, Boris hasn't been a total disaster. But it feels like the vultures are circling for Boris, doesn't it? Yesterday, he fended off another Tory rebellion. Once people start to break ranks, it becomes easier for them to keep doing it. And clearly now, there are growing numbers of Tory MPs who feel more willing than ever to vote against their leader. But it's more than that. Is he really the man you thought he was? Where's this big green agenda come from? That's not Boris, is it? That man would happily drive a Hummer across the Arctic if someone gave him the chance. The man fell asleep at COP26, for goodness sake. The only wind energy he really cares about is the type that comes after a particularly ropey curry. Basically, Boris is presiding over a huge tax hike that, frankly, will make us all poorer and we're yet to be consulted about. And then there's the illegal channel crossings. He's unable to sort that out. Record levels of people have arrived under his watch. They've tripled in a year. The figure now apparently stands at just over 25,500. Didn't we all think that Boris stood for strong borders? He promised to level up and then scrapped the northern leg of HS2. Then there's the sleaze, isn't there? He's bathing in it, he's basking in it. Whether it's Carrie's expensive wallpaper, whether it's cash for honours, whether it's trips to Mustique, whether it's the fresh prospect of a criminal inquiry into what may or may not have happened with Jennifer Okuri, it's hanging over him like a cloud. And then there's, stuff like this.
Motoring correspondent, EVs may not burble like sucking doves, and they may not have that rum, rum, rah, rah that you love. Safer streets with great local schools, with fantastic broadband. Forgive me. And Tony, yesterday I went, as we all must, to Peppa Pig World. I don't know if you've been to Peppa Pig World. Hands up anyone who's been to Peppa Pig World? Not enough. It's fantastic. I was a bit hazy what I would find at Peppa Pig World, but I loved it. And Peppa Pig World is very much my kind of place. But the real lesson for me going to Peppa Pig World, and I'm surprised you haven't been there, was about the power of UK creativity. Who would have believed, Tony, that a pig that looks like a hairdryer, or possibly a sort of Picasso-like hairdryer, a pig that was rejected by the BBC, would now be exported to 180 countries with theme parks both in in America and in China, as well as in the New Forest.
What? Oh, look, I'll just ask again. If you voted for Boris, is he the man you voted for? Is his time up? Is there actually anyone else to replace him? Is he only really still in power because the leader of the opposition is so wooden that birds are trying to nest in him? Crucially, are Boris Johnson's days numbered? Yes, a lot of you already getting in touch on this. Strong views.
It was very bizarre, but actually, I think so with these things, I always think, yes, Boris is quite odd, but this is why people like him, isn't it, really? Because he's unorthodox. I know there are some people, and I was listening to the radio yesterday, some people are absolutely outraged and enraged that this is our Prime Minister and he's speaking to, and this is how he's behaving when he's speaking to business leaders, and I understand that. But what I would say to those people is that this is just a long list of gaffes, some might say, or just, you know, that's his character, and this is, I think, baked into what people want when they vote for him.
Look, there's a lot of people getting in touch being like, oh, can you stop bashing this company? I like the guy. I genuinely like the guy, right? I mean, there's stuff like that. And in a weird way, it makes me like him even more. I don't know what that says about me, don't get me wrong, but I do quite like him. But it's just that question, isn't there, of whether or not now the vultures are circling. Lots of people have got in touch here. I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. That's from, no name on it, actually, but that's what my mum used to say to me when I've been naughty. Yes, lots of people saying, I did vote for Boris and had very high expectations of him. Sadly, he has no backbone. The farce at the Kent border is a joke, and that's from Karen.
Yeah, and Tom Harwood was speaking about this on his show a bit earlier with John Rentoul. And they were saying this is actually really clever because instead of talking about Keir Starmer's speech, which Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, also did a speech to the CBI, which apparently went down really well with the leader of the CBI, basically saying, you know, it's great to see a Labour leader who's pro-business. And the reason this is clever, I suppose, on the part of Boris, which is what John Rentoul, the point he was making, is because now we're talking about Peppa Pig and Boris Johnson and not speaking about actually a speech from Keir Starmer that went down pretty well. So, hey, look, I think it's not a bad day out for Boris Johnson.
Yeah, I do feel a little bit for Keir Starmer. I mean, I think he's so dull. But anyway, I do feel for him a bit because he's there making his very serious points, and then Boris just does the old classic steamrolls in, talks about Peppa Pig, bish bash bosh, down the pub we go, and gets all of the reaction. Do we seriously expect Boris to be absolutely perfect 100% of the time? He's under extreme pressure from all sides, including his own. And that is from Kate. Yeah, fair enough, Kate, absolutely.
Yeah, I suppose it's not about being perfect. We can't expect that from anybody or any leader, but I'm not sure speaking about Peppa Pig, saying hands up anyone who's ever been to Peppa Pig World in front of the country's top business leaders. I mean, come on.
Yeah, although actually, again though, at its core was actually quite a good point.
It was. He managed to
make
his way around it.
He did manage to get to the idea, basically, that it's only through kind of creative industry that these things can happen. You know, no government could come up with this idea of Peppa Pig, and frankly, nor should they. And although potentially, I can't say that about Cameron. But and then also, you know, there's other things like the civil service and stuff like this. You know, and you know, they could never have come up with this. He also got a little bit of BBC bashing in there as well, which I like.
Yeah, and all I know as well is that if Keir Starmer ever got into that position, would he be able to finesse his way around it whilst making the crowd have a little bit of a giggle? I don't think he would. I think it would just be incredibly awkward because, as you say, he is very wooden. But let us know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Did you give Boris your vote and now regret voting for him, or are you actually pleased after seeing this that you did give him your vote? Let us know. But after the break, we'll be discussing the latest developments in the Wisconsin parade incident as the driver of a car has been charged with homicide. Stay with us for that.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good morning. Now, it's emerged that the man accused of killing 5 people at a parade in Wisconsin was out on bail on domestic abuse charges. Daryl Brooks faces 5 counts of first-degree homicide after police say he deliberately drove his car into the Christmas parade on Sunday.
48 people were injured, including 6 children who are in a critical condition. Now, the Milwaukee District Attorney has said Brooks had been out on an inappropriately low bail. Well, let's talk now to US journalist and broadcaster Laurie Laird about what further detail has been revealed in this case so far. Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind just bringing us up
Good morning.
Where we are right now.
Well, I mean, this is such a mysterious story. And remember, whenever we hear of cars going into groups of people, we tend to think, is this a terrorist event? It was not. As you mentioned, the Daryl Brooks was out on bail. We understand it was some kind of domestic abuse charge. And you're right, it was £1,000 was his bail. District attorneys, the prosecutors are now saying that was inappropriately low. Don't have a great deal of background about those charges that put Mr. Brooks into jail in the first instance. I suspect some of that will unfold in the days to come. I also would not be surprised if the charges on Mr. Brooks were upgraded to murder rather than homicide. But again, we'll have to see how things unfold over the next couple of days. For such a bizarre case, it's quite odd. There's a lot that we do not know yet.
And this is obviously taking place in Wisconsin, and we know that the American justice system, obviously it depends on which state you are, the severity of the punishment he would get if he was found guilty of anything, of course. What kinds of penalty would he be looking at the severe end? Because this is an incredibly serious incident, and as you say, multiple homicides are at play here.
Well, I think that people will tend to, Wisconsin has been in the news because of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Remember, Kyle Rittenhouse was the teenager who had crossed state lines with an assault weapon, killed a couple of people. His trial just ended last week. He killed a couple of people in what he claimed was self-defense. A jury found that to be upheld that. So we're looking at Wisconsin at the moment. This will be a very different sort of trial. There is no way that Mr. Brooks can claim any sort of self-defense, but we are seeing a lot about Wisconsin in the news. I can tell you that, I'm digressing a little bit, but I've spent some time in Milwaukee. That's the biggest city in Wisconsin. It is a very peculiar place. And while we're not talking about race in either of these situations, it's underlying things in the state of Wisconsin, and particularly in Milwaukee. It is an extremely segregated place. So I think race does come into how things will be viewed in the days and the weeks to come.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, it was absolutely devastating, clearly, the scenes there. It just explains to me a little bit about the bail system in America, because clearly, well, just from what I've read anyway, this chap was initially had a bail that was set relatively high. That was then reduced because he spent long enough in prison, I think, that they couldn't get to his trial in time or something. And so actually he got out, didn't he, based on a very little amount of money. What's the system like there?
Well, I mean, every state, as you rightly mentioned, every state is very different. We don't know very much about the charges that put Mr. Brooks in jail in the first place. But yes, $1,000 does seem to be very low. But we simply don't know. We understand that he was in jail on domestic abuse charges, and you're right. The system did not get to him very quickly. That was why he was released. But without knowing what those charges were, and again, it's unusual that we have so little information about this one. But without knowing what those charges were, it's difficult to assess whether the bail, whether the conditions, whether the amount was appropriate or not. Now, district attorneys, prosecutors are now saying this was artificially low. It should not have been this low. He should not have been out. But again, not knowing what the original charge was, it's difficult to make an assessment of that.
And how quickly is this now likely to move? Obviously, the police will have to conduct quite a large investigation. But when can we expect a trial, do you think? Will it be at the early end of next year, or could it take a very long time?
Difficult to say. I suspect that this one will move rather quickly. The police will be under pressure because it is such it's one of those crimes that has really captured the nation. I think police will be under pressure to do something very quickly. As I mentioned, the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, that came to court very, very quickly. Sometimes these things can take years to unfold. But if we go back to Kyle Rittenhouse, where the teenager who was acquitted after he shot some people in riots following the shooting of a black driver, that came very, very quickly. But I suspect with that one, we're going to see, as he was acquitted, we're going to see some civil litigation as well, and it could be depending on what happens with the criminal prosecution of Mr. Brooks. If that, depending on how that unfolds, we could see civil charges as well.
Thank you very much, Laurie, for joining us and whizzing us through that case. And obviously, there's a lot more to unpack there. Laurie Laird there, of course, US-based journalist. And, yeah, there's devastating news coming out now that, clearly 48 people were injured, 6 children in critical condition, for goodness sake. It's devastating scenes in Wisconsin there.
Yes, indeed. Now, moving on. The Royals' households have taken the rare step of issuing a joint statement accusing the BBC of giving credibility to what they say are overblown and unfounded claims that featured in an explosive documentary that aired last night. The Princess and the Press included claims from Meghan Markle's biographer Omid Scobie that insiders from other royal households had briefed against the Sussexes.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And, you can just take that one to the bank, can't you? Buckingham Palace said it was disappointing that the BBC had chosen to air the documentary amid reports that the royal family were not offered a preview beforehand. Meghan Markle's lawyer, Jenny Afia, appeared in the programme to defend her against claims of bullying staff, which the palace are actively investigating. So, yes, I mean, it's... look, it's an astonishing piece, really. There is that question mark as to whether or not the royal family should have, or indeed had a right to see this beforehand. You could argue that they did. I mean, ultimately, the BBC does operate off a royal charter, as discussed yesterday.
It's our public broadcaster, and I think it's a very odd move. We spoke to somebody yesterday who was saying, actually, they were quite cynical about why this has taken place, because they said the editor, I think, or the presenter for this documentary was actually a self-proclaimed Republican, was definitely not a fan of the royal family, so he thought that had something to do with it. I think it's just an odd move, generally speaking, that they didn't give them at least some sort of right to reply.
Well, the BBC have clearly decided that they want nothing to do with the royal family forever, because they're going to get nothing out of them now. In fact, the royal family, as far as I understand it anyway, have suspended all operations that they had ongoing with the BBC, and I would imagine will pretty much almost never work with them again. It is poor timing. The Queen, look, fingers crossed she's all right, has not been in the best of health, has she? She's in her dotage, as it were. Of course, as well, you look at this now and you think, was it really the right time to come out with something like this? Especially from the organisation, of course, that was embroiled in all the Martin Bashir stuff.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not a great look, is it?
No, absolutely. Well, we're going to go to some of your views, GBNews at gbnews.uk. A lot of you have been getting in touch about the question Patrick posed at the 9:30 monologue. He asked whether you have buyer's remorse over Boris if you voted for him and now regret doing so, based on his rather odd behaviour yesterday at the CBI speech.
Yeah, and a few other things as well. I mean, he's not got to grips with what's going on in the channel. This big green agenda has come out of nowhere and clearly just isn't Boris. And there's lots of stuff. Is he the man you voted for? Boris is an accident waiting to happen. This is from George. There's a lot of you actually backing Boris, it's fair to say. John has been in touch to say he's tired, he's clearly had a cold. I loved his speech, he lost his place and he continued to ad-lib. Fair play to him, that's absolutely a view. And Ivy's just said elect a clown and get a circus.
I just don't think he enjoys being Prime Minister.
No.
I mean, would you, if you were Boris Johnson? I don't think you would. I mean, he could be earning infinitely more not being Prime Minister. There's that. He has an, unverified number of children, not least, he's obviously newly married relatively and has a young child. And so it's, I don't blame him for being a bit fed up. I think he wanted the power of being Prime Minister, but doesn't perhaps want to do all the hard graft.
No, well, not solely. That said, though, clearly, he's done some things right, and it is a tough job, and there's a reason why I'm sat here and he's over there. He's capable of doing things that I'm simply not, in more ways than one. I love Boris. I'll still vote for him. I mean, look at Labour. Would you vote for them?
Well,
and that's from Baz.
That's the thing, isn't it? Keep on getting in touch, GBViews at GBnews.uk, and we'll be going to those throughout the show. And we'll be back in a minute with more of today's top stories and more views.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, a very good morning to you. A few frost and fog patches around first thing, but replaced by sunny spells this afternoon. Although there will be a lot of cloud around, more cloud compared to recent days. That cloud is coming in around the edge of this area of high pressure into mainly northern and increasingly eastern parts of the UK. It's closest to the area of high pressure where we're seeing those frost and fog patches first thing. Wales, parts of Western England, for example. Any fog tending to lift reasonably quickly. By late morning, it's sunny spells for northern and western England into Wales. Cloudier skies elsewhere, and that cloud continuing to bring some light drizzly showers into northern western Scotland. The odd one there for North Wales as well. But for the vast majority, it's a dry and bright day. Temperatures reaching 8 to 10 Celsius. Then where we get the clearest skies overnight, I think across central and southern parts of the UK, well, temperatures will fall away, and perhaps some more dense and more extensive fog patches forming. You can see them appearing there across southern parts of Wales, southern England as well. Otherwise, a lot of clouds sticking around and some wetter weather appearing into northern western Scotland and Northern Ireland through the night. That keeps things frost-free in the north, but a cold start further south, and watch out for those fog patches in the south on the roads first thing. Eventually they'll lift into low cloud, but I think a cloudier day for the southern part of the UK compared to today. A slice of sunshine moves south ahead of this weather front, which brings the rain into northern England, northern and western Wales by the afternoon. Brighter skies, but colder air follows for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Blustery showers, with those showers falling as snow over the hills of Scotland. And that sets the scene for Thursday and Friday. It's increasingly windy. Those winds coming from the north will bring increasingly cold weather, and we'll see some wintry stuff with snow primarily over northern hills.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
GBviews at gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki. We're here all the way through until midday, and it really is a bumper show for you today, so make sure you stay tuned.
Yes, and get in touch as well with your views, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be going to those throughout the show. And remember, the question Patrick is asking you this morning is, do you have buyer's remorse over Boris Johnson? Did you vote for him in the last general election and now regret it? I'm sure many of you have seen those scenes of his speech yesterday, and we'll show you those a bit later as well. So get in touch with your views, and we'll be getting to more of today's news after this.
Good morning, I'm Tamsin Roberts. This is your news at 10 o'clock. At least 45 people, including 12 children, have died in a bus crash in western Bulgaria. 7 people who managed to escape are in hospital in a stable condition. The incident happened on a highway about 45 kilometres west of the capital Sofia in the early hours of this morning. It's thought the majority of passengers were tourists from North Macedonia. Bulgarian officials say the cause of the crash is not yet known. MPs have narrowly voted in favour of cost-saving reforms to the government's social care policy. They won the vote by 26, with 87 Conservative MPs rebelling or abstaining. The changes mean only personal contributions will count towards an £86,000 cap. State benefits won't be included. Some backbench MPs say the changes will hit the poorest people hardest and could force some to sell their homes to cover the cost of care. Chief Executive of Cascadere, Belinda Schwer, says the government doesn't understand the care system.
Even though the poor will be impacted on more directly, it will be better for more people. The real problem is that there hasn't been a proper debate by people who understand the system. Families whose representatives step up and do informal care are actually saving the rest of us from having to pay more tax. And yet the charging system will not take account of how much care you get.
The Requiem Mass of Sir David Amess, the Conservative MP who was killed during a constituency meeting, will be held at Westminster Cathedral this morning. The Archbishop of Westminster will lead the service alongside a representative from the Vatican who will deliver a special message from Pope Francis. The service follows the private funeral held in Southend yesterday. Former Conservative minister and friend of Sir David, Anne Widdecombe, has told GB News of her fond memories of him.
He was interested in the job of being an MP, and he did it supremely well. I just loved his sense of humour and his willingness always to put himself out. He was somebody who, we would leave the House of Commons late at night absolutely exhausted, and he'd offer me a lift. And then, instead of just driving off, he would come in to see my mother and chat to her. And yet he would be dead tired.
It's emerged that the man accused of killing 5 people at a parade in Wisconsin was out on bail on domestic abuse charges. Darrell Brooks faces 5 counts of first-degree homicide after police say he deliberately drove his car into the Christmas parade on Sunday. 48 people were injured, including 6 children who were in a critical condition. The Milwaukee District Attorney has said Brooks had been out on inappropriately low bail. A new study shows that regularly performing household chores leads to better memory and attention span in older adults. Published in the British Medical Journal, researchers said that elderly people who participate in a combination of light housework and chores appear to have higher cognitive function than those who don't. Participants in the study who carry out more heavy housework had higher attention span scores and performed better on memory tests. Don Angleton, Professor of Cognitive Neuroscience, told GB News that exercise enhances connections in the brain.
First of all, it helps your blood supply, and that's great news for your brain. There's also evidence that certain hormones that are induced by exercise and activity actually increase plasticity in your brain. And of course, that's very beneficial for learning and memory.
The NHS could start to prescribe people living with mild depression exercise or therapy over medication. That's according to new draft guidance from the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. It recommends group sessions in things like meditation, exercise, behavioural therapy or individual counselling sessions, which should be offered as a first treatment rather than antidepressants. NICE says it's the first guideline in 12 years to identify, treat and manage depression in adults. The Brit Awards are going gender neutral, with the male and female categories being scrapped. Instead, prizes will be given to Artist of the Year and International Artist of the Year. Sam Smith, who won the Critics' Choice Prize in 2014 and identifies as gender neutral, was among those pushing for the move. The awards take place at the O2 Arena in London in February. Well, you're right up to date. I'll have the latest headlines for you in half an hour. Now, though, it's back to the point.
Good morning, everybody. You're watching To The Point on GB News with Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki, and we've got a show full of all of those biggest stories, biggest guests and those top topics, so make sure you stay tuned.
Yes, here's what's on the menu. Parliament has voted to approve a change to the government's social care, despite fears that it will make poorer households pay even more. We'll be digging down and understanding the details of these changes very shortly.
We will indeed. Now, a service is being held in Westminster this morning to honour Conservative MP Sir David Amess. This follows a private funeral in Southend-on-Sea yesterday. Ellie Costello, our South East correspondent, will be live from outside the service.
Yes, and Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer released videos yesterday in support of gaining a 50-50 representation of men and women in Parliament. Join us for our head-to-head feature later on as our guests debate whether or not quotas, gender quotas, are desirable.
Yeah, do you actually want that? Do you want gender quotas in Parliament? We're getting stuck into all of that. We've got all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. Get in touch, as loads of you have been, gbviews at gbnews.uk. But first, Mercy gives her views on the treatment of author J.K. Rowling.
Literary extraordinaire J.K. Rowling has been forced to contact police after 3 transgender rights activists revealed where she lived on social media, prompting fears for the safety of her and her children. Writing on Twitter, Rowling said, "Last Friday, my family's address was posted on Twitter by 3 activist actors who took pictures of themselves in front of our house. I've now received so many death threats that I could paper the house with them." Her only crime, defending women's rights over trans activist bullies. In an essay she wrote last year, which turned out to be controversial to some, the author expressed concerns that the increasingly unreasonable demands of the transgender movement were taking precedent over issues of women's rights and safety. She also expressed concerns about children being encouraged to transition, perfectly reasonable concerns. She's since been the target of a hate-fueled campaign by radical LGBTQ+ lunatics, enduring a crusade that many would mentally cripple from. And as Posey Parker writes in The Spectator, if activists can get to one of the richest women in the world, make no mistake, they can silence Janet at number 52, who risks not paying the mortgage if she loses her job. This is why standing with Rowling is so important for everyone who wants to live in a decent, civil society, which is tolerant of other people's views. I believe the biggest threat to women speaking up for their rights is no longer men. It's fast becoming trans activist bullies who want to silence, harass and burn women they disagree with at the stake. If we let them win, we'll be complicit in rolling back the hard-fought-for rights of women and in tearing down the sacred pillar of free speech that holds Britain up as a society. And we'll also be complicit in taking Britain back to a level of discourse fit for the Dark Ages. These 3 activists who posted Rowling's address were so audacious, they uploaded the pictures on their own Twitter accounts with their faces in full view. Well, they've since deleted their Twitter accounts, like the cowards they are. J.K. Rowling is on the right side of history, and I will stand with her and everyone else who wants to fight the tyranny of these lunatic radicals till the bitter end.
Gosh, you certainly made it sound like you're ready for war.
Well, it is to some degree, isn't it? it's a war on common sense, for one. That's what these people have launched an attack on. And not only that, obviously we can disagree on what common sense is. I completely accept and appreciate their right to have a different view from me. That's perfectly fine. That is what I want to have in civil society. What these people do, these trans activists, these radical activists, they want people to attack women who disagree with them. So if you disagree with the fact that some people want to say people who menstruate instead of women,
chest feeding,
which is what J.K. Rowling was, taking the mickey out of, actually, at the time. She was saying this is ridiculous. It's women. It's not people who menstruate. And they want them posting these pictures outside her house and posting her address. They want people to send her hate mail. They want people. They want to put her and her kids' life at risk. That is their aim by doing this. That is their sole aim. And if they can do this to her, they have absolutely no problem intimidating any other woman who happens to have an alternative view on the trans rights thing. And it's so dangerous, and I think we all have to stand up to it, because it's not just a woman's thing. It's an issue fundamentally of freedom of speech and being able to express what many consider common sense views on gender.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose Parker rightly said that they can get to Janice at number 52, and they can, and it's a way of silencing people, because what it is it creates a situation now where people say, well, actually, unless you've got this view, you will get cancelled. And so for most people who are just going about their daily lives, they don't work in politics, they don't work in news, they don't work in whatever, they don't necessarily devote a huge amount of their life to thinking about this stuff. And therefore, it's not really a hill they're willing to die on. And that's fair enough. I can completely understand that. But it does mean that when they're at a dinner party, they just go with that generic view. And I reckon up and down the country now, it's a bit like what's taking place in the Channel. Up and down the country now, there'll be entire tables of people round, having a dinner party where every single one of them will be lying to each other about their real views on this stuff. I can guarantee you that. 100%, take it to the bank. Every single person on that table is going, I mean, this is just progressive. Actually, in their heads, a lot of them are thinking women are women. And I think when people go in the Channel, well, I think borders are just a ridiculous construct. Actually, I think they like quite.
Yeah, it's that quote. I paraphrase here because I can't remember the exact words, but it's something like, for evil to thrive, it just needs good people to do nothing. And it's that same thing. People think they're being harmless by just nodding along and agreeing with things that they know they don't believe in, but they'll just nod along and agree because they don't want to cause a fuss. They don't want to get accused of being transphobic or racist or Islamophobic, whatever it is. And so they just nod along. But actually, that empowers the people who want to silence people, exactly the kinds of people who will turn up at your house, post your address so that people send you and your children hate mail. We can't let those people win.
Yeah, well, is it inciting violence? I mean, eco-activist and TV presenter Chris Packham had a car explode outside of his New Forest home, for example. I mean, so people are willing to go to quite extreme. Once they find out where you live, it's game over, really, isn't it? And so, I think that was particularly awful, and lots of people are getting in touch to agree with you. J.K. Rowling's abuse is typical of perverse double standards. We are recipients of the madness of the radical woke left, and that's from Terry, who's not mincing his words today.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's move on to a story about a vote that took place yesterday in Parliament. MPs yesterday voted on a change to the government's social care reforms. That's despite opponents warning that poorer households would end up paying more. The House of Commons backed plans to stop council support payments towards the new 86,000 cap on lifetime care costs. The Prime Minister insists the new system would still be incredibly generous, however.
Well, Mike Padgham is a care provider who has been chair of the Independent Care Group for 20 years. The ICG represents independent care providers in York and North Yorkshire. Thank you very much for joining us. Boris Johnson's under the cosh anyway, let's be honest, and this saw quite a prominent rebellion, actually. Senior Minister Esther McVey, Mark Harper, they rebelled against the plan, amongst others. Several others just didn't turn up. What do you make of it overall? Just give us your overall view. Is this a massive letdown?
I believe the reforms are a massive letdown. I wanted the government to be much bolder early on, and I'm pleased that the members of the government have shown, or members of the Conservative Party have shown, that they're not happy with things. I hope and believe the government will change things as it goes forward, because I believe there's still time. But it's disappointing with the plans because, as you said in your earlier piece, it affects those who are less well off more than those who are better off, and that is not a fair system.
Well, what is it that you really wanted? One of Boris Johnson's kind of statements, whether or not it was just a throwaway remark, was, you won't have to sell your home to get care. And it looks like you still might have to do that. What was it exactly that you wanted? Because some people might be looking at this now and going, hang on a minute, something like 43% of our entire national expenditure now is on health and social care. That's probably about enough. So is it just more money that you wanted?
Well, I think it's a wholesale reform that we want in social care, health and social care, basically. But yes, it does mean if we want the good quality of life, if we need help in the future or if we get older, then I think that people will want to pay a little bit more, like they do with the health service, to get good care in the future. The problem is with social care, it's not as good as it could be. And I think the public are ready for more funds to come in through that method. But I do believe, and one of the key issues is we've got to pay social care staff in the front line more money because it's a highly skilled job. Sadly, they don't get, they're not on a parity with the NHS, and we need to pay them better. And that's got to be paid for somewhere. And unfortunately, that means us all paying a bit more for care. But that's a crucial bit that's been missed out of these reforms is social care staff. We already have huge vacancies in social care. We can't recruit into the sector, and we need more people for the future. So that's a big hole the government hasn't plugged yet.
Yeah, we spoke to somebody on this channel earlier, Tom Harwood, actually, who said the reason so many MPs didn't turn up, Conservative MPs, is probably because they don't actually understand it. They still find the whole thing quite convoluted. They don't really want to vote, put their name to something they don't quite understand or believe in. If MPs don't even really understand the complexity of all of this, this is quite an indicator that the system will still be incredibly complex. It's not going to actually solve much if people don't even understand what they're supposed to do when new reforms come in.
No, I quite agree with you. Each time we tinker with it, we make the system much more complicated. You're quite right. The public don't really understand it, and MPs don't. I don't believe the government understands how social care works. Otherwise, it wouldn't be doing what it's doing. A strong social care sector helps the health service. But we have got to make it simpler for the public. Honestly, I believe that people don't really need social care till they need it. So it's something they don't think about. But when they come to need it, they can see how imperfect the system is. And it's not free at the point of need like the health service. You've got to pay for it. There aren't enough staff. There aren't enough resources. And the quality of care that you get is acceptable, but we need to make it better. The thing is, we want a good quality of life. We are living longer, which is good, but we want good social care. So we've got a fantastic health service, but social care plays second fiddle. And the public need to work out, if they want better social care, they have to vote at the next election for a party that's going to make sure they do actually get social care done. Because sadly, though the Prime Minister said many times he's going to get social care done, he hasn't even started yet.
Well, I understand that. I mean, the pandemic obviously did hit the care system particularly hard. I'm just reading here now, you know, a third of all COVID deaths seem to come in care homes as well. Staff sickness, PPE supply, increased pressure on the care system as well. The pandemic obviously had a devastating effect on the quality of care. All of that is known, and a lot of that, in my opinion anyway, was self-inflicted, as in by this government. You know, releasing people into care homes and allowing COVID to rip through like wildfire was, I think, a particularly bad thing that's probably worthy of some form of inquiry, if you ask me. However, you know, people might be saying, well, hang on a minute, maybe the community could do a bit more. Is it all about government money? Maybe people should do a bit more to look after their elderly relatives themselves. Maybe we should have more of a community. Is there an issue here, a wider societal problem, perhaps?
Well, I think there's a big debate this country needs, but I would say there's millions of unpaid carers out there already saving the government massive amount who are doing hard work, looking after their loved ones already. I don't see how they can do much more. And if the government wants the economy to work, it needs people out there in jobs. And if you're going to look after your loved ones, it's impossible for people to be able to work and look after their loved ones at the same time. So I do think we need a better system. Yes, it is a society issue. We could do more. But at the end, we need help so that people get the care they need, the social care they need as they get older or they're vulnerable. And it's a big question that I hope will feature in the next election when it comes and will be at the top of the list. Sadly, MPs don't seem to think it's a vote winner. My view is actually it's going to be the biggest issue at the next election.
And Mike, if I can just finally ask you, the government policy of mandatory vaccinations for care home staff and eventually from next April, frontline NHS staff, how has that affected your care homes, and what effect do you anticipate that will have on the wider social care system, particularly in older people's homes?
Well, it's a difficult issue again. And I might just say briefly, I am in favour of the vaccination. I've had my 2 jabs and a booster, and I think everyone should have it. But I do think personally it should be a choice of the individual. Sadly, the government hasn't helped us in the sector with the amount of vacancies we've already got in the sector, which is about 10% of the workforce. It's estimated that we're going to lose up to 60,000 more because of mandatory vaccinations. And those are people we need. So it's not helped us. And I would have asked the government to have looked at bringing mandatory vaccination in the same time as it bring in for the health service next April, once we're through the winter. So it's going to be very tough. There aren't enough people out there to do the work. And sadly, we might have to hand some of the work back to local authorities. And they are struggling too. So it's a perfect storm, unfortunately. But no one from government seems to listen to our pleas.
Mike, thank you very much for imparting your wisdom on this issue onto our show. Mike Padgham there, of course, an expert when it comes to the care home system and social care as well. But after the break, our head-to-head feature, ladies and gentlemen, today focuses on whether an equal gender balance in Parliament is actually necessary, desirable, or the only way to achieve true representation in Westminster. But first, time for weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hi there. High pressure remains close to the UK, so dry for most with some sunshine today. But actually there is a lot of cloud, a bit more compared to yesterday in a few places. That cloud coming in around the top of the high, especially for northern parts of the UK, but also some cloud affecting eastern and southern districts as well. So sunshine a bit more limited compared to yesterday, but still some sunny spells about the Midlands into parts of East Anglia, southern England and South Wales. Otherwise a generally cloudy picture, the cloud thick enough for a few spots of rain and drizzle for parts of North Wales, northern and western Scotland as well, similar to yesterday really. Fewer showers for the far southeast, they'll tend to remain offshore, and temperatures around average for the time of year, 8 to 10 Celsius. Now heading into the evening, and the cloud tends to sink south somewhat. Where we do keep the clearer spells, fog will form, some dense fog patches in places. Where we get the cloudier skies, it will remain a bit milder and fog and frost free. But this weather front will sink south into northern and western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland by dawn. A period of rain, nothing particularly heavy or prolonged, but it does clear the air to colder conditions following on for Wednesday itself. So we'll start off with that area of cloud and rain pushing into southern Scotland, the rest of Northern Ireland, arriving into northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. Further south, some dense fog about first thing, but otherwise it's a cloudy day for many, temperatures similar to today. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, brighter, but also more showery weather and a blustery cold breeze comes along. So it's going to turn a bit more wintry, I think, over the tops of the mountains, and actually snow level coming down to about 300 metres for northern Scotland by Wednesday evening. It will tend to settle above 500 or 600 metres, and then the weather turns even colder later this week. It also turns much windier and more unsettled with rain and hill snow.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Well, now it's time for our head-to-head, discussing big topics and big ideas, and hopefully have a little bit of a row as well. Today, we're talking about gender equality in our politics. So yesterday, Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer both released videos on Twitter in support of gaining a 50-50 male-female representation in Parliament. Both videos received a variety of responses, it's fair to say. So, this morning, we're asking the question, is an equal number of male and female MPs necessary?
Yes, well, joining us to discuss both sides of the debate is Frances Scott, the founder and director of 50-50 Parliament Group. And opposing her is Dawn Neeson, columnist, broadcaster and former national newspaper editor. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Obviously, big issue, very topical, isn't it? Gender representation. So, as you know...
We have a 50-50 split here.
Yeah, exactly. So we're quite representative. But... I don't know if you've seen this before, but we're going to give you 1 minute each to state your case, and then we'll regroup afterwards, and then we can discuss the merits of both sides.
OK, well, Frances, let's start with you. I can see you're very on brand. You've got your T-shirt on. Your 60 seconds starts now. Should we have a 50-50 split in Parliament?
Is that me?
Yes. Frances.
OK. Well, we want a parliament that draws upon the widest possible pool of talent and experience, including that of the 32 million women who make up 51% of the population. To your previous piece, 90% of nurses are women and many people who work in the care sector are women. If we had more women in parliament, we'd be hearing these voices. Representation shapes policy, and there's plenty of evidence that although men can represent women, they do so much better when there are more women in the room. So take, for example, women fought for family allowance, equal pay, new legislation concerning domestic violence. When asked why there was tax on tampons, President Obama explained it's because men were making the laws when those taxes were passed. Apart from, it's not just about women's issues, though. Women need to be bringing their wisdom and advice.
60 seconds, I'm afraid, Frances. There's rules, Frances. There's rules. We'll come back to you. Dawn, your 60 seconds starts now. Dawn Neeson, columnist, broadcaster, sensation.
Good morning.
Should we have a 50-50 split?
You can put the word positive before discrimination we want, but at the end of the day, it is still discrimination. Women have been fighting to have their voices heard since 1848, the first female equality meeting that took place. But what we wanted was equality, Patrick. What we didn't want was special privileges and pats on the head because we're women. That is what we're fighting against. In an ideal world, as Frances said, obviously it would be 50-50, but do we apply that to all jobs? I think positive discrimination, it just breeds more hatred. People are less likely to support you if they think you got the job because you're a woman or because you're black. I would really hate to think that I got to the top of my profession as a newspaper editor because I was women. I got there on hard work and talent, not because I'm a woman. And I don't want other young girls to think that. Rations and quotas are inherently racist and sexist. And the best person for the job is the best person for the job, regardless of their colour or their sex.
That is your 60 seconds
ding,
over.
ding.
That is your don't worry, we'll get stuck into it more. Frances, let me throw some of what Dawn said back to you. We don't need quotas. We don't need all this positive discrimination, as Dawn said. It does foster a sense of, resentment, perhaps. Why don't we just let things progress naturally and authentically?
Well, the 21st of November is Ask Her to Stand Day. You have to have a clear aspiration if you want to bring about change. We need to know where we want to head. And since women were first allowed to stand, over 5,000 MPs have been elected, but only 556 have been women. And in most elected bodies, women are still outnumbered by 2 to 1. So what we're saying is we want people to ask her to stand. If you know a woman who you think would make a great elected representative, then please ask her to stand, because the evidence suggests that women need to be asked more than 3 times before they would consider putting themselves forward for elected office. And we need their experience. We're saying, women, we're calling upon you. Our country needs you. At the last election, only 12 extra women were elected. At this rate, it's going to take another 40 to 50 years before we get gender balance at Westminster. So we need to be encouraging and supporting women in coming forward for elected office.
Let me just throw over to you, Dawn, because Parliament is special. It's a special employer. It's not really an employer, but Parliament's special in the sense that it's an elected body that represents the whole country. And in order to represent the whole country, surely the least you could ask is for 50% of it to be women and 50% of it to be men, because that's what the country basically looks like.
No, I want my MP to be the best person for that job. I don't want them because they are a woman. I mean, if we're talking about, a women-only shortlist, I mean, and the calibre of MP that throws up. I mean, let's talk about Claudia Webb, for example. Yeah. I mean, she succeeded Parliament originally on an all-women shortlist, and then she was just parachuted in when she wasn't even good enough for that. So, and look what happened there. She not only proved to be a very bad MP who was not intelligent enough for the job, but also now a criminal. Positive discrimination does not throw up the best people for the job. Never has, and it never will do. To be fair, I agree with Francis on one thing here. We do need to encourage our daughters to kick doors down, to smash those glass ceilings, to come forward, to stand, but not because they are girls, because they are talented, they are strong, and they believe in themselves. We need them to achieve because of what they are, not what sex they are.
Yeah, well, all good points. Francis, I'm just going to throw it to you. Do you want a 50-50 split in the army?
No, Parliament is meant to be a representative body, and absolutely, it's women planning the future is a joint responsibility, and women need to be putting their minds and their opinion and experience needs to be included in this. And it's fantastic that our party leaders are leading the way in showing respect for women and asking them to stand and saying that Westminster welcomes women, because they should be leading the way and showing respect for women. And that's what our Ask Her to Stand campaign is all about. If women click sign up to stand with us, we offer that we set up a personal political profile, we offer them a buddy, we invite them to bite-sized meetings once a week, and we offer bespoke support to women who might be from diverse and different backgrounds and might suffer more discrimination. So it's about working with the top of the parties and also persuading the local selection committees to take women seriously and include them in the democratic process.
I'm very conscious of how outnumbered I am here in the optics of me silencing women as we're talking about a 50-50 gender split. We started with Francis Dawn. I'm getting shouted at in my ear horrendously now. But yes or no, this is how I'm giving you the final word, so deal with it. Do you think that Boris Johnson actually wants a 50-50 split in Parliament, yes or no?
Look, everybody should want a 50-50 split. In a fair world, that should be the case. However, I'm just going to throw back at you Margaret Thatcher and Theresa May, who got to the top without being part of all women shortlists or because of their sex. They got there because of their talent.
Got it. Sure.
Both of you.
We want to build.
I think that we have to leave it there.
Enough.
I think we agree. We want the best people for the job, and if women want to stand and be representatives, nothing should be in their way to stop them, basically.
Both of you,
that's what we can agree on, I think.
Tremendous to have people speak so passionately on this show. Thank you very, very much. Dawn Neeson there, of course, columnist, broadcaster, sensation, and Francis Scott as well, founder and director of 50-50 in Parliament. Right. Oh, I need a break after that.
Yes, well, after the break, we'll be with our GB News South East of England reporter, Ellie Costello, who is at Westminster Cathedral today for a service in memory of Conservative MP Sir David Amess, who was, of course, stabbed to death at a constituency surgery last month. But before that, a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, I'm Tamsin Roberts. Here are the latest headlines. The Prime Minister and the Chancellor have arrived at Westminster Cathedral for the Requiem Mass of Sir David Amess. The Conservative MP was killed during a constituency meeting last month. The Archbishop of Westminster is leading the service alongside a representative from the Vatican who will deliver a special message from Pope Francis. The service follows the private funeral held in Southend yesterday. At least 45 people, including 12 children, have died in a bus crash in western Bulgaria. 7 people who managed to escape are in hospital in a stable condition. The incident happened on a highway about 45 kilometres west of the capital Sofia in the early hours of this morning. Bulgarian officials say the cause is unknown. MPs have narrowly voted in favour of cost-saving reforms to the government's social care policy. They won the vote by 26, with 87 Conservative MPs rebelling or abstaining. The changes mean only personal contributions will count towards an £86,000 cap. State benefits won't be included. Some backbench MPs say poorer people may have to sell their homes to cover costs. The Brit Awards are going gender neutral, with the male and female categories being scrapped. Instead, prizes will be given to Artist of the Year and International Artist of the Year. Sam Smith, who won the Critics' Choice Prize in 2014 and identifies as gender neutral, was among those pushing for the move. Well, that's all for now. I'll have more on today's main stories at 11 o'clock.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in, and indeed everyone who's been getting in touch as well. We'll go to the inbox very shortly, but actually first, before that, service of Mass is taking place at Westminster Cathedral for the Tory MP, Sir David Amess, who was killed during a constituency meeting in October.
Yes, his private funeral and procession was held yesterday in Southend-on-Sea, and the Archbishop of Westminster will lead today's service alongside a representative from the Vatican who will deliver a special message from Pope Francis.
Yes, well, let's talk now to Ellie Costello, GB News' South East of England reporter, who was at Southend-on-Sea for us yesterday and is now at Westminster Cathedral today. Ellie, thank you very much for joining us. What's the scene like there? What's happening at the moment?
Hi, Patrick. Yes, this is the second day of remembrance for Sir David Amess. Yesterday was that private funeral service in Southend, a very emotional affair there for the friends and the family and the close political colleagues of Sir David. Today is a much larger event here at Westminster Cathedral. This is for the leaders in Sir David's political life and indeed his faithful life as well. We're at Westminster Cathedral, which is the mother church for the Roman Roman Catholic Church in England and Wales, and it's in Westminster, which is the political home ground, London's political district. It seems like a very fitting place for the final farewell to Sir David. So a full requiem mass is just getting underway. The doors have literally just closed behind me on that mass, and Sir David was a devout Catholic, so it is a very fitting final farewell for him. And the coffin was just carried in ever so carefully through those doors behind me into Westminster Cathedral, and a guard of honour from the doorkeepers of the House of Commons welcomed the coffin into the cathedral. It really was a very special and sombre moment. And you can see those pictures now on your screens. And this location is ever so special because 38 years ago, this is where Sir David married his wife, Julia, in this very cathedral. And in fact, Pat Brown, the Roman Catholic duty priest for Parliament, he officiated at their wedding here 38 years ago. And he is delivering the homily on this very spot in this very service 38 years later. So it's almost a full circle moment. This is where Sir David and Julia started their married lives together, and it's where Sir David is laid to rest today, where the end of his life is marked. And Sir David was not one for an understated affair, and people are saying here that this is very grand. This is something that Sir David would have wanted. It's a great display of pomp and of reverence as well, and that is what he was all about. So what is going to be happening behind those doors now? Well, we know that the Archbishop of Westminster is presiding over the service this morning. His Excellency Archbishop Claudio Guattori, who is the diplomat almost from the Vatican City. He is the ambassador for Pope Francis. He is here and he is delivering a message from the Pope, I'm sure, talking about Sir David as a man of faith. And we've also seen members of the Houses of Parliament. We've seen Prime Minister Boris Johnson head into the cathedral behind us, Sir Keir Starmer, former Prime Ministers as well, Sir John Major, David Cameron and Theresa May as well. And there are members of the Qatari royal family inside as well. So lots of very important people here today. Anne Widdecombe is doing the eulogy today. She's delivering the eulogy, a very close friend of Sir David. And I asked her what we should be expecting from the service. This is what she told me.
Well, this is Westminster Cathedral, of course, which is the centre of Catholicism in this country. David was a practicing Catholic. He led the all-parliamentary group for the Holy See, which meant that he met the Pope on several occasions. The Pope has sent a message, and I reckon this, an awful lot of important people here today, but the most important person probably in all Britain to the Pope was probably David Amess.
What legacy does Sir David leave behind, and how will he be remembered?
I hope he won't be remembered for his death. I want him remembered for his life. Obviously, there's a very hard legacy in Southend because it's now been made a city, and it wouldn't have been but for him. So that is a very discernible legacy, but there's a bigger and a broader one, which is simply example. There is a lot more to politics than I think a lot of people imagine, and David gave it his all.
A very emotional Anne Widdecombe there speaking to me just before the service as she is doing the eulogy in the Mass that has just started behind me. You might be able to make out that first hymn that is ringing around us now. It's going to be a very grand and a very emotional service for a man of politics and a man of faith.
Ali, thank you very much on what is such a sad day. You'll be with us throughout the day today and as the funeral of Sir David Amess takes place there at Westminster Cathedral. Yeah, I mean, look, it's so poignant in so many ways, actually. I wasn't aware there. Ali was saying that's kind of the very spot where he was married, of course, and the person who's giving the homily was there right at the start of the wedding as well, and it's just kind of an awful symmetry to it all, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think for me, at least, and for many people, I think that one of the ways to honour his memory is to keep on talking about Islamist terrorism and the harm and damage it does in society. That won't bring him back, of course, but it's a way we can, honour his memory, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we will be giving you updates, obviously, on the service throughout the day here on GB News. But over the last few years, The number of Brits relying on antidepressants has increased. Well, now, roughly 1 in 7 people in England take the medicine. More than 20 million antidepressants were prescribed in just 3 months last year.
Yes, well, now the clinical watchdog, NICE, has suggested people could be offered other treatments for poor mental health, including discussions about what may be contributing to their depression and the person's experience of any prior episodes or depression, as well as group exercise that could be offered as a treatment as well. Well, Peter Cohen is a peak performance coach and best-selling author with mental health and fitness expertise. Thank you so much for joining us. This is really, well, depressing, really, that so many people are now turning to, or doctors are prescribing so many antidepressants. Have we become too reliant on turning to medicine, turning to pills, instead of perhaps trying something like physical exercise?
Well, I think really it's such a great that you're having this debate, because actually I didn't actually know the statistics, and they are alarming. 7.3 million people on antidepressants. And of course they have a place, but are they a long-term solution? We know that one of the challenges that many GPs have is, look, GPs do not know how to make people be very well. They just know how to stop people from being sick. And there is no question about it. Right now in our country, there are more people struggling with mental health issues than ever before. And a lot of people don't really talk about how they're feeling. But if we're being honest, the pandemic has brought a lot of things to the surface. You know, a lot of people are living in fear. A lot of people are worried, anxious. So it's not surprising that they go to the doctor, and the solution that the doctor has is, here's a prescription, here, take this. And of course, these things, they do make a difference. But as you quite rightly pointed out, you know, exercise. We all know, in fact, some really interesting research which came out a couple of years ago actually shows that when we exercise, our muscles secrete something that is now known as hope molecules. So that when we exercise, we tend to feel more hopeful. But the challenge around all of this is, if you're depressed or worried or anxious, do you feel like exercising? And the answer to that question, I would say for 99% of people, is no. Because when we think about exercise, most people think, well, that's going to be hard work. Unless we show people and teach people how to think greater than they feel, then it's very hard. A doctor could say you need to exercise, but you can't exercise for them. So, but it is good. This is the first time in 12 years that these kind of guidelines are really being changed around what people are being encouraged to do when they've got mental health problems, and especially depression.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you feel as though there's an over-reliance then, really, on, I suppose, a chemical solution, as it were, and actually potentially, especially when it comes to children? One thing I'm very, very concerned about is the amount of children that you see on antidepressants, the amount of how quickly it is to get them on it. Because, again, is that really getting to the very root of whatever issue it is that they have? Is that going to nullify it? Is it just throwing kind of a wet blanket over, burning fire of depression, as it were? And actually, once you get kids started on these things, what does that look like going forward? What's your views on that?
Well, it's again, it's fairly controversial, because I'm sure they have a place, but the challenge is that people, like you say, they then get used to it and it becomes normal. It becomes the normal. And look, I used to be a teacher, right? I used to be a physical education teacher, and I could see even back in the days when I was doing that children were struggling. I really don't think the answer to everyone is just give them medication. But what's also really fascinating is some of the studies have shown that when people who are active stop exercising, that becomes like taking a depressant. The challenge is to get people into that habit of doing things that they can actually change their psychology. I think sometimes we think, what's the greatest discovery that man has ever created? You know, is it going to the moon? I'd say, well, that's great, but I think the greatest discovery is the fact that we can actually change the way that we feel. We can change the way that we think, but giving people, you know, medication and just not giving them the opportunity to talk. I mean, when I don't know about you, but I struggled as a child and no one actually asked me how I felt. I was diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. I was diagnosed with dyslexia, but back then, prescribing medication just wasn't the thing to do. Whereas now it seems like that is the thing to do. And of course, look, everyone is different and there's a unique case behind everyone. But like you quite rightly say, Patrick, I think there is a danger that everyone is just being given medication, which is making the pharmaceutical companies billions of pounds, and they want us to stay on these medications. Just like if there's a problem with your health, there are things that you could do that if you were on medication, by changing your health, you could come off the medication. Well, there's mental health as well as physical health. And there are some principles that we can apply.
And very quickly, Pete, for people who are at home and they're thinking, well, OK, that sounds like a great idea. I'm going to try actually getting fitter as a way to deal with my depression. But they've probably never set foot in a gym. They don't even know where to turn to. They can't afford a personal trainer. What would you recommend to those people?
Well, first off, thank you for asking that question. So understand that there'll always be resistance, even for people who are fit. Because when we were running around in caves and doing what we did then, you wouldn't go to the gym because gyms didn't exist. The only reason you would move is because you had to. You needed to eat, you needed to run away from danger. So understand that when you think about exercise, it's probably quite likely you won't feel like it. However, just start. Just say to yourself, I'll do a minute, I'll walk for a minute, I'll walk for 5 minutes. Because once you start, it's hard to stop because you start secreting these molecules that are associated with hope. You start secreting serotonin. Just start. Once you start, the hardest thing to do is just get started. But once you start, it's quite hard to stop. It sounds a very simple thing to do, and it is. And I encourage people just to give it a go because that's where change comes.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, I need a bit more Pete Cohen in my life because, Pete, I'm currently paying £58 a month for a David Lloyd membership. I've been twice and once was just for the sauna. So I really, really, really need you in my life. Yes, thank you very much. Pete Cohen there, a peak performance coach, best-selling author and potentially my saviour. So thank you very much. Look, it is actually a very serious issue. Obviously, it's a very serious issue. And, you know, there is that balance to be had, isn't there? Routine, organisation, making sure you get enough sleep. None of the things that I do. You can actually, you know, really kind of boost your mental health that way. You don't have to always go on the medication, do you?
Yes, absolutely. But, of course, listen to your doctor, I think, is the other advice.
Which I am definitely not.
Yes.
No.
Well, now, moving on from that, as the EU and the UK continue to negotiate changes to the Northern Ireland Protocol, all this week on GBNews, we're looking at what it is, why it's a problem, and how it's affected people's lives across the country. The protocol is part of the Brexit withdrawal agreement. It means Northern Ireland is part of the UK, but still in the EU's single market for goods in order to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland.
Yes, well, that means more customs checks and paperwork for some goods and animals travelling from Britain to Northern Ireland. For one farmer who specialises in breeding cows, the protocol hasn't been good, as Paul Hawkins has been finding out.
What's this one's name?
Korski Vesna.
Korski Vesna?
Vesna.
How do you decide on a name?
We bought that cow back in 2008.
Right.
That cow there is 14-year-old. She's done having natural calves. We're just flushing away at her, taking embryos.
Alan breeds cows and used to sell them to Scottish farmers who paid the best price. But the protocol has changed all that.
How much riskier has the protocol made it?
Big time. It's made it a lot riskier. We bred these pedigrees here to take cross. The top end ones we take to Sterling every year. We were going twice a year, every February and October. And now from the 1st of January, if we take a bull and we don't sell him, or we get turned out of an inspection before the sale, we can't bring him home again for 6 months. And this is serious, serious stuff.
How much is that costing you? That potential sale that you could make when you're there?
Well, if you have a good bull there, you could be making you 7, 8, 9, 10 grand if you have the right bull. That's twice a year.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of money in the year gone. I voted for out, to be honest.
You voted for out. Did you anticipate this kind of problem?
No. As I say before, it was never mentioned of.
We'd spoken to people who feel strongly about their identity and who they are, and that they feel British, and that this de facto border in the Irish Sea makes them feel further from Britain, and that they feel Boris Johnson said there wouldn't be any sort of border in the Irish Sea, and now there is, and they feel betrayed. How do you feel about that? Do you feel strongly at all? Couldn't care less?
To be honest, I'm not really worried about that side of the thing, to be honest.
Yeah.
As long as we're getting away with our product, making good money on the business, not really worried about anything else down that line of thing.
Yeah. Do you feel betrayed by Boris Johnson?
No.
Well, there we go. That's the clip from our 33-minute film called Northern Ireland, The Problem with the Protocol, which will be released on YouTube on Friday. It's part of Northern Ireland Week, which will also see Liam Halligan and Darren McCaffrey presenting special programmes from across the country this week as part of our ongoing coverage of the negotiations to change the protocol between the EU and the UK.
Yes, indeed. Well, keep your views coming in, gbviews at gbnews.uk. I think we can go to a few now just before we take a break.
Yes, well, we had our head-to-head earlier on this hour, didn't we? And we were asking whether or not there should be a 50-50 gender split in Parliament, and it has incited a lot of you. The woke brigade won't allow it. That's from Richard. There we go, strong stuff, Richard. Yes, lots of people. Should we have a 50-50 split with refuse collectors? How many women do you see doing bin runs? And that's from Peter.
Yeah, I do take that point, but what I would say to that, even though I don't necessarily agree with quotas, and I don't think this is what it is necessarily, but elected representatives obviously in a whole different category to ordinary workers. So that's where I would say, OK, well, there's more of a case for the people representing you, taken as a whole, to be as reflective as possible. And quite frankly, I think one of the biggest issues is not gender in that respect, it's class. You know, the number of MPs with working class background or who have had working class jobs before they joined. I think that's where I would prefer to see better representation before you get to arbitrary characteristics like gender.
I mean, when you have
sex,
things like
race.
all women and all BAME shortlist, you end up with Claudia Webb, and we can't have that. So Boris, as well, this is one of our big discussions at the start. Do you have buyer's remorse from Boris Johnson? Would you vote for him again? Half has been in touch. Yes, I will surely vote for him again. He needs a break. He doesn't look well. He'll be back on form soon. And so that's one view, of course. A lot of you do, of course, just according to my inbox, feel quite a bit of buyer's remorse for Boris. Bojo has lost his mojo, apparently.
Yes, apparently. Well, keep all of your thoughts coming into us, gbviews at gbnews.uk, and we'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after the break.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hi there. High pressure remains close to the UK, so dry for most with some sunshine today. But actually there is a lot of cloud, a bit more compared to yesterday in a few places. That cloud coming in around the top of the high, especially for northern parts of the UK, but also some cloud affecting eastern and southern districts as well. So sunshine a bit more limited compared to yesterday, but still some sunny spells about the Midlands into parts of East Anglia, southern England and South Wales. Otherwise a generally cloudy picture, the cloud thick enough for a few spots of rain and drizzle for parts of North Wales, northern and western Scotland as well, similar to yesterday really. Fewer showers for the far southeast, they'll tend to remain offshore, and temperatures around average for the time of year, 8 to 10 Celsius. Now heading into the evening, and the cloud tends to sink south somewhat. Where we do keep the clearer spells, fog will form, some dense fog patches in places. Where we get the cloudier skies, it will remain a bit milder and fog and frost free. But this weather front will sink south into northern and western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland by dawn. A period of rain, nothing particularly heavy or prolonged, but it does clear the air to colder conditions following on for Wednesday itself. So we'll start off with that area of cloud and rain pushing into southern Scotland, the rest of Northern Ireland, arriving into northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. Further south, some dense fog about first thing, but otherwise it's a cloudy day for many, temperatures similar to today. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, brighter, but also more showery weather and a blustery cold breeze comes along. So it's going to turn a bit more wintry, I think, over the tops of the mountains, and actually snow level coming down to about 300 metres for northern Scotland by Wednesday evening. It will tend to settle above 500 or 600 metres, and then the weather turns even colder later this week. It also turns much windier and more unsettled with rain and hill snow.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews at gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in to The Point. You're watching us here, me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki, and we're here all the way through until midday, so just about another hour for you. Here's what's coming up.
Yes, and make sure you get in touch with your views on, as usual, GBViews at gbnews.uk. We'll be reading those out. But first, what's coming up is the latest news, so let's give that to you.
Good morning, I'm Tamsin Roberts. This is your news at 11 o'clock. The Requiem Mass of Sir David Amess, the Conservative MP who was killed during a constituency meeting, is taking place at Westminster Cathedral. The Archbishop of Westminster is leading the service alongside a representative from the Vatican who has delivered a special message from Pope Francis. The service follows the private funeral held in Southend yesterday. Former Conservative minister and friend of Sir David, Anne Widdecombe, has told GB News of her fond memories of him.
He was interested in the job of being an MP, and he did it supremely well. I just loved his sense of humour and his willingness always to put himself out. He was somebody who, we would leave the House of Commons late at night absolutely exhausted, and he'd offer me a lift. And then, instead of just driving off, he would come in to see my mother and chat to her. And yet he would be dead tired.
At least 45 people, including 12 children, have died in a bus crash in western Bulgaria. 7 people who managed to escape are in hospital in a stable condition. The incident happened on a highway about 45 kilometres west of the capital, Sofia, in the early hours of this morning. It's thought the majority of passengers were tourists from North Macedonia. Bulgarian officials say the cause of the crash is not yet known. MPs have narrowly voted in favour of cost-saving reforms to the government's social care policy. They won the vote by 26, with 87 Conservative MPs rebelling or abstaining. The changes mean only personal contributions will count towards an £86,000 cap. State benefits won't be included. Some backbench MPs say the changes will hit the poorest people hardest and could force some to sell their homes to cover the cost of care. Chief Executive of Cascadere, Belinda Schwer, says the government doesn't understand the care system.
Even though the poor will be impacted on more directly, it will be better for more people. The real problem is that there hasn't been a proper debate by people who understand the system. Families whose representatives step up and do informal care are actually saving the rest of us from having to pay more tax. And yet the charging system will not take account of how much care you get.
It's emerged that the man accused of killing 5 people at a parade in Wisconsin was out on bail on domestic abuse charges. Darrell Brooks faces 5 counts of first-degree homicide after police say he deliberately drove his car into a Christmas parade on Sunday. 48 people were injured, including 6 children who are in a critical condition. The Milwaukee District Attorney has said Brooks had been out on inappropriately low bail. A new study shows that regularly performing household chores leads to better memory and attention span in older adults. Published in the British Medical Journal, researchers said that elderly people who participate in a combination of light housework and chores appear to have higher cognitive function than those who don't. Participants in the study who carry out more heavy housework had higher attention span scores and performed better on memory tests. John Aggleton, Professor of Cognitive Neuroscience, told GB News that exercise enhances connections in the brain.
First of all, it helps your blood supply, and that's great news for your brain. There's also evidence that certain hormones that are induced by exercise and activity actually increase plasticity in your brain. And of course, that's very beneficial for learning and memory.
The NHS could start to prescribe people living with mild depression exercise or therapy over medication. That's according to new draft guidance from the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. It recommends group sessions in things like meditation, exercise, behavioural therapy or individual counselling. Sessions that should be offered as a first treatment rather than antidepressants. NICE says it's the first guideline in 12 years to identify, treat and manage depression in adults. The Brit Awards are going gender neutral, with the male and female categories being scrapped. Instead, prizes will be given to Artist of the Year and International Artist of the Year. Sam Smith, who won the Critics' Choice Prize in 2014 and identifies as gender neutral, was among those pushing for the move. The awards take place at the O2 Arena in London in February. Well, that's all for now. I'll be back with the latest headlines in half an hour. Now, though, it's back to the point.
Good morning, you're watching To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki and Patrick Christys, and we've got a show full of all of today's big stories and lots of discussion on the issues you care about. So here's what's on the menu for the next hour.
Well, yes, a whistleblower has claimed that the NHS's only gender service for children believes all girls who do not like pink ribbons and dollies must be transgender. You couldn't make this stuff up. We'll bring you the latest on that in our feature, The Controversy.
Yes, and France has rejected Britain's offer to patrol their beaches in a bid to ease the current Channel migrant crisis. What are the options available and why is this situation seemingly not improving? Well, we'll discuss.
Yeah, we will indeed. And technology that may one day be needed to tip a dangerous asteroid off course. Apparently, it's actually due to be tested. Sadly, unlike in a remarkably similar storyline, Bruce Willis will not be involved.
Yes, well, we have all
for
of that.
now.
We have all of that coming up and much more across the programme. And get in touch as usual on the email you see there, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick gives his views on Priti Patel.
Yes, it looks as though Priti Patel is all out of ideas. She's thought about wave machines in the Channel. She's thought about offshore processing. She's thought about sending illegal migrants to the Ascension Islands for processing. She's thought about sending them to Gibraltar. Both of those ideas came as a massive shock to the people of the Ascension Islands and indeed Gibraltar. She's thought about sending them to Albania for about a day until Albania said no. She's thought about telling our border force to turn boats back, but it turned out that we had a head of border force who didn't really believe in borders and they refused to do their bidding. She thought about paying the French something like £58 million to tow migrants back, or frankly, just stop them leaving the beaches of Calais. The French said no. In fact, since the announcement that we were actually planning on paying the French loads of money, the number of arrivals has drastically increased. She thought about giving it one last go, asking the French if we can help them patrol their borders. Again, the French said no. But this time, it was because they thought it would infringe their sovereignty. They're actually using the sovereignty argument against us now. Look, as everyone knows, I've not always been a massive fan of the French, and yes, sometimes I've been known to engage in lazy stereotypes. But credit where credit is due. The sovereignty thing is top trolling. And that, as they say, is that. It appears she's exhausted her pool of ideas. I think we're probably about a week away from Priti Patel erecting a giant TV screen on the White Cliffs of Dover that just plays Mrs. Brown's Boys on repeat in the hope that it will turn the boats back. I certainly would rather face barrel bombs in Raqqa than watch a single minute of that show. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Our Home Secretary should put a GP's receptionist there in charge of it because they won't let anyone in. In all seriousness, though, It now has to be time for us to change our Home Secretary. She's bang out of luck. She's out of ideas. She's banging her head against a brick wall. Like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Manchester United, sometimes you just have to admit that it isn't working. And we need someone with fresh ideas. We need a fresh start. The fact is that the issue of illegal channel crossings isn't simply about a humanitarian crisis. It isn't simply a case of whether or not you just want to accept these people as human beings into your country. And all too often, that's what it's framed as, isn't it? Do you want foreigners or not? But that's not really it, is it? We're facing up now to the reality of what it means to accept this many people and not really send any of them back. Anyone who says this isn't a national security risk is insane. Of course it is. Would you let someone into your home if you didn't know who they were or where they came from? No. Why? Because it would be a security risk. So that's that. It's a question of resources as well, isn't it? It's costing us hundreds of millions of pounds to look after these people. We're using up social housing and other forms of accommodation that could be used to house homeless people already here. Brits who've fallen on hard times throughout COVID, veterans. Local councils are now claiming to be overwhelmed and unable to take more people, even unaccompanied child migrants. It's a mess. It's a hot mess. And if our current Home Secretary is unable to sort it out, then I'm afraid she has to go. I'm not claiming to sit here with all the answers, although, to be fair, that's not my job, is it? If our current Home Secretary is a busted flush, I think it's time to let someone else have a crack at it.
I'm quite interested at how you pronounce trolling.
Trolling?
I think this could be a new debate.
Top trolling?
I say trolling.
And if that's really what we've taken from that monologue, then I think, hey, we're on to a winner here, aren't we?
Okay, on a serious note, though...
I feel for it, by the way, could I just qualify something quickly before I let you get stuck in, which is that I do understand that might have come across as being deeply critical of Priti Patel. I mean, it was, but it is with a sense of, almost regret. I do think she's tried.
It is with deep regret that I'd like you to lose
that I hand you this P45 and ask you to disappear from public life. But yeah, no, I think we just need someone with fresh ideas. She's giving it a go. It's not worked.
Yeah, see, the thing is, that's the problem. I feel for her as well a bit, but that's the thing. There are no ideas left. There's only so much you can do that is within the law, that is within international law. And she's already trying, through the Nationality and Borders Bill, to be as stringent and as strict as possible as we can be within international law. So I'm not sure what else she really can do, and I'm not sure what else a new person, a new Home Secretary, and let's not forget, I mean, the calibre of people, in the top seats of government and ministers, etc., aren't exactly the best people either. There's nobody I can see as an obvious replacement for her, to be honest. And so I'm not sure what else they would be able to do as well that she hasn't tried.
Well, Barbara's got the answer, as always. Now, thank you very much, Barbara. She says, has Priti Patel thought about trying to find out how the boats are acquired in the first place by these criminal traffickers? And that's kind of it, isn't it? If we do remove the human smuggling gangs, if we cut the head off that snake, if we can find a way now of stopping the procurement of these boats, then actually that really stops them getting across, doesn't it? And I find this staggering. There's no way that the people who used to manufacture these boats have ever been busier. There's no way they were getting this number of orders, is there? There's no way that they were getting orders for the amount of components that you need. And we all know what they're being used for. So surely it must be possible in France to pass a law that means that you come under deep, deep scrutiny if you are making these boats.
Yeah, but there's also laws against, Class A drugs and, people still manage to get hold of those. I think we're talking about these human traffickers are obviously people who are willing to risk the lives of women and children by chucking them onto a shoddy boat and into the busiest shipping lane on planet Earth. 600 ships pass through the channel on a daily basis. People who are willing to do that, which are obviously criminals, I'm sure they can find a few rubber dinghies lying around, or they can find ways to get rubber dinghies, even if they were illegal. So I don't... They wouldn't just stop sort of getting them just because
they're show a bit of willing, though,
Yeah.
Just show willing, France.
Yeah,
just show
just
a
do
bit.
something.
Just a little crumb of care. But anyway, Out Mehmet is with us now, I believe. And he is, of course, the chairman of Migration Watch UK, an independent research organisation calling to reduce the current levels of immigration. Well, we are seeing yet again records. We're also now seeing, I think, Alp, the fruits now of this, which is that local councils, aren't they, are even saying that they can't actually even take unaccompanied child migrants. This is a mess, isn't it?
It is indeed. Can I just first say, Patrick, perhaps you'd like to be Home Secretary, listening to you just now. I think that a lot of this problem, frankly, is because we are being far too political, if you like, rather than looking at the problem and identifying what the solution is going to be. As far as I'm concerned, that solution must include the French and indeed the EU as a whole. Nothing to do with whether we are in the EU or out of it. This is something beyond that. The French, I think they are playing politics. A lot to do with the fact that they've got a French election coming up for the presidency. So they are, I think, playing hardball partly because of that. But when they talk about sovereignty, we have juxtaposed controls. We have immigration officials based in France at the border who actually accept applications to come to the UK as immigration officers and very often refuse people. The French accept them then. So what is the difference between us accepting them at that point or refusing them and the French having them back and them traveling across the channel and our refusing them and sending them back? So I think that until the French really get more serious, about stopping them setting off in the first place, but more importantly, dealing with the migrants in their own country, then it's going to become increasingly difficult for us. And numbers will go up, possibly 30,000 by the end of the year. That's horrendous. We're over 25,000 now. We are really heading towards disaster. We are looking at thousands and thousands more coming next year than have come even this year.
And many people say that the solution to this is create more viable routes for these migrants, many of who, well, all of them, presumably, say they're asylum seekers and do indeed claim asylum when they get here. Open more routes, create a process where they can apply and they don't have to be in this country to apply. What do you say to that?
I think that is a nonsense, frankly. Creating more routes, we do have plenty of routes at the moment. There's Syrians, there's Afghans, there's Hong Kongers. We've said to 5 million Hong Kongers they can effectively come here. The people coming across the channel are not Hong Kongers, I appreciate, but there are other routes, including from countries where a lot of them are coming from. All you're going to do is just create a route to have more people entering while the illegal traffic will continue apace. If anything, it's going to encourage it, frankly. We're talking about millions of people around the world who are looking for a better life. And why wouldn't they? Well, okay, if you're saying anyone who wants a better life can come here, then go ahead. But the British people don't want that. The majority.
No, I mean, it's an interesting point. And I think, something we alluded to earlier on, Alp. I'm pretty convinced that a lot of...
Sorry, I may have lost you there.
Oh, have you got us now, Alp? No.
I have got you, yes.
Oh,
that was my fault, not yours.
Fantastic.
I hasten to add.
Fantastic. Just quickly then, Alp, what do you make of the French saying that we can't help them patrol their borders because it would infringe on their sovereignty?
Nonsense. Frankly, we are infringing their borders and their sovereignty by having juxtaposed controls. Why shouldn't they work with us if they're really serious about stopping the boats from coming over? The fact is that they're not, primarily because they can't do anything about those who are entering France in the first place. It's out of their control. And even Michel Barnier referred to that fact recently. And if the Poles and Lithuanians and the Greeks and the Italians are working at their borders to stop illegal migrants entering their countries, then why can't the EU as a whole be serious and do that?
I think a lot of people have raised the question, certainly, haven't they, that we can send troops over to borders in, Belarus or wherever, but actually we don't seem to be able to police our channel pretty well. I can see the logic behind it, though, because if they want to stop them at source, as it were, before they make their way through the continent, yeah, fine, but one would have thought that maybe we were able to do both. Out Mehmet there, who's obviously head of Migration Watch, discussing what's been going on in the channel. Lots to get stuck into there. More record days, of course. Triple now the number of people coming over this year than there were last year. And now local councils are starting to say, hang on a minute, we can't really take any more. We haven't got the room. GB Views at GB News. Keep those views coming.
Yes, and after the break, we'll be bringing you our feature, The Controversy. And today we're talking about reports that the NHS's only gender service for children believes that all girls who do not like pink ribbons and dollies must be transgender. That's what a whistleblower has said some people at this clinic believe. But first, let's give you the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hi there. High pressure remains close to the UK, so dry for most with some sunshine today. But actually there is a lot of cloud, a bit more compared to yesterday in a few places. That cloud coming in around the top of the high, especially for northern parts of the UK, but also some cloud affecting eastern and southern districts as well. So sunshine a bit more limited compared to yesterday, but still some sunny spells about the Midlands into parts of East Anglia, southern England and South Wales. Otherwise a generally cloudy picture, the cloud thick enough for a few spots of rain and drizzle for parts of North Wales, northern and western Scotland as well, similar to yesterday really. Fewer showers for the far southeast, they'll tend to remain offshore, and temperatures around average for the time of year, 8 to 10 Celsius. Now heading into the evening, and the cloud tends to sink south somewhat. Where we do keep the clearer spells, fog will form, some dense fog patches in places. Where we get the cloudier skies, it will remain a bit milder and fog and frost free. But this weather front will sink south into northern and western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland by dawn. A period of rain, nothing particularly heavy or prolonged, but it does clear the air to colder conditions following on for Wednesday itself. So we'll start off with that area of cloud and rain pushing into southern Scotland, the rest of Northern Ireland, arriving into northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. Further south, some dense fog about first thing, but otherwise it's a cloudy day for many, temperatures similar to today. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, brighter, but also more showery weather and a blustery cold breeze comes along. So it's going to turn a bit more wintry, I think, over the tops of the mountains, and actually snow level coming down to about 300 metres for northern Scotland by Wednesday evening. It will tend to settle above 500 or 600 metres, and then the weather turns even colder later this week. It also turns much windier and more unsettled with rain and hill snow.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Join us for the Political Correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the Political Correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK, the world, and our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We're here for you. Don't forget to join our community by hitting the subscribe button.
And download the GB News app so you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
Now, a whistleblower has claimed that clinicians in the NHS's only gender service for children treat girls who do not like pink ribbons and dollies as if they must be transgender.
Dr. David Bell, a consultant psychiatrist who worked at the Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust, which runs the UK's only gender identity development service for children, has said that the department had a rigid binary construction of gender, which is a bit ironic, I think, isn't it? And that's the service's only acceptable explanation for children who are unwilling or unable to conform to gender stereotypes, is that they must be transgender.
Yes, well, to discuss this further, we're joined by Stephanie Davis-Arai, the Director of Transgender Trend, which is a group dedicated to looking into the concerns around the medical people. Thank you for joining us this morning. This really concerns me because there must be lots of children at the moment in the country who perhaps think they could be transgender. Perhaps they've been told just because they don't like certain things that they might be transgender. And what this doctor is saying, Dr. David Bell, is that they go in and it's very simplistic what these doctors and these clinicians are doing. Do you like girl stuff? No, you don't. Oh, well then, sure, you must be transgender then. That's very worrying.
Yes, and I think we have to make clear that when we use the term transgender, what you're saying to a girl is if you're not girly enough, then you're literally a boy. So it really plays into and reinforces those really regressive stereotypes of how girls should behave and what kind of interests girls should have. The whole thing, I think we need to understand, is based on an ideology. If you feel like a boy, then you literally are a boy. That's an ideology. It's not a medical, transgender is not a medical or clinical diagnosis. It's more a label, a political term. And children are being taught this in schools today, in UK schools, that they have this inner feeling, this gender identity, which overrides their biological sex. Now, the NHS doctors know that you can't change sex, that you can't medically intervene in a child's healthy body and change that body and make that child the opposite sex or make that child go through the opposite puberty. That's impossible.
But there's an inherent hypocrisy here, isn't there? They're trying to shatter the traditional notion of what it means to be of a particular gender by allowing people to change that gender if they so wish. But their metric with which they're judging whether or not someone is transgender is by using one of the most outdated forms of what gender possibly can be, i.e., if a girl doesn't like pink, she's a boy now. And this is just absolutely bonkers, isn't it?
Well, yes, it absolutely reinforces those really regressive and extreme stereotypes of what a girl should be and what a boy should be. What children should be taught in schools and in wider society, that a girl who likes to have short hair and play football and climb trees is a perfectly okay girl. That it is perfectly okay for girls to do that, and it's okay for boys to play with dolls. That This is not a problem.
I use just a bit of context. You know, I feel comfortable enough in my gender identity to reveal this now to the nation. I did ballet when I was younger, believe it or not, and I figure skated as well until I was 8. I mean, if I'd have gone to the Tavistock, I'd be a girl now, wouldn't I?
Well, you wouldn't, actually. You would still be male. If you're born male, you're male for the rest of your life. You can only have treatment that makes you superficially resemble the opposite sex. And this is what's happening to girls. And girls go on to have double mastectomies. And for children to be taught this in schools, that if you've got a certain personality that doesn't fit the stereotype for your sex, then you need to have medical interventions so that you superficially resemble the opposite sex, and that this is presented as the answer and the cure. Well, evidence shows that it's not. The evidence that we have shows that this medical treatment does not cure gender dysphoria. It does not help any underlying mental health issues or problems that a teenager may be having, but it leaves a child with irreversible effects on their body for life. So, for example, a girl who has puberty blockers and then testosterone is left with a male voice and male, a beard, male pattern, baldness, body hair, facial hair. And these effects are irreversible. Plus, we actually don't know what the long-term effects of these wrong sex hormones have on children's developing bodies, because this is so new and it's been carried forward on the basis of so little evidence that we simply don't know what the real long-term effects are on this cohort of children.
And if it is based on so little scientific evidence, what is it based on? Because Dr. Bell has said, the whistleblower in this case, who's actually worked at the Tavistock, at this trust for 24 years as a psychiatrist, he said that the influence of powerful political lobbies, such as Stonewall and Mermaids, have closed down the space for thought, doubt and exploration. So do you think these people who are carrying out these procedures for these children, they're basically just being pressured into it by political ideologues in the transgender lobby? They're not going based on science anymore.
It's not based on rigorous clinical research trials. It's not a clinical approach to affirm a girl that she is a boy. That's not a clinical approach. That is a political and ideological approach. It's based on a belief that a girl has an innate feeling of being a boy, and that means she really is a boy. There is no scientific evidence to support that idea that we have an innate sense of being a boy or a girl that we're born with. So it is an ideology. It is a belief, and you cannot have a medical system that's based on a belief. I think this is why we're seeing such a scandal at the Tavistock, because the treatment has been based on a belief rather than on clinical evidence.
Well, Stephanie Davis-Arai, thank you for joining us this morning to talk about that very controversial issue, the director of transgender trend there.
Loads of views flooding in thick and fast about this very issue, as you can imagine. GB Views at gbnews.uk. As Professor Winston said, if you're born a girl, you're a girl. If you're born a boy, you're a boy. We aren't allowed to say tomboy anymore. And that's from Adrian. There you go.
I was a tomboy when I was younger.
It was like we swapped roles, wasn't it? Yeah, I was out ballet dancing. I was out figure skating.
At some point.
You were kicking a football around and doing whatever.
Yeah, I played basketball and lots of stuff. But I at one point was like, no, I'll never be a girly girl. I'll never wear makeup. I was a proud tomboy. And I mean, if I had probably gone to one of these clinics, they would have been like, yeah, well, you must be transgender, and probably put me on puberty blockers. And look at me now.
And indeed, look at you now. And every single advert break that we've had so far this show, Mercy has made me look at what filter she thinks is best on the selfie that she's just taken, and I just can't handle it anymore.
He did actually give me some good advice
just to make it stop. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Keep those views coming in thick and fast.
Yes, and after the break, the NHS could offer therapy and group exercise before antidepressants antidepressants for individuals with mild depression under new guidelines. But before that, let's look at this morning's news.
Hello, I'm Tamsin Roberts. Here are the latest headlines. The Requiem Mass of Sir David Amess, the Conservative MP who was killed during a constituency meeting, is taking place at Westminster Cathedral. The Archbishop of Westminster is leading the service, alongside a representative from the Vatican who has delivered a special message from Pope Francis. The service follows a private funeral held in Southend yesterday. At least 45 people, including 12 children, have died in a bus crash in western Bulgaria. 7 people who managed to escape are in hospital in a stable condition. The incident happened on a highway about 45 kilometres west of the capital, Sofia, in the early hours of this morning. Bulgarian officials say the cause is unknown. MPs have narrowly voted in favour of cost-saving reforms to the government's social care policy. They won the vote by 26, with 87 Conservative MPs rebelling or abstaining. The changes mean only personal contributions will count towards an £86,000 cap. State benefits won't be included. Some backbench MPs say poorer people may have to sell their homes to recover costs. The Brit Awards are going gender neutral, with the male and female categories being scrapped. Instead, prizes will be given to Artist of the Year and International Artist of the Year. Sam Smith, who won the Critics' Choice Prize in 2014 and identifies as gender neutral, was among those pushing for the move. Well, you're right up to date. I'll be back with more on today's main stories at the top of the hour.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So Boris Johnson is well and truly under the cosh. He's got it all going on. There's a migrant crisis taking place in the Channel. We're all being asked to sign up to a big green agenda that as yet he's not bothered to consult us about. He's embroiled in sleaze. And then, of course, today as well, he was giving a talk at the CBI, during which he lost his place, spoke about Peppa Pig World and made car noises. So I'm going to ask, has Boris Johnson lost the plot?
Boris Johnson never had the plot. So the thing is, Boris Johnson's a comedian. And he did excellent. When it's on I've Got News for You and things like that, he's hilarious.
Yeah, he is.
And he's entertaining and people like him. He's likeable.
Yeah.
But is he credible?
No, I don't think he has.
Good, why not? Why not?
Why?
Do you back him?
Well, yeah, he's trying his best, isn't he? No one else is sort of coming forward, are they?
Has Boris Johnson lost the plot, in your opinion?
Definitely.
Yeah? Why specifically?
He's just lost the voters' trust, hasn't he? He says one thing and does something else.
Do you think he actually will end up clinging on?
Yeah, because the opposition's nowhere near as good, and he won't hang on if he brings in another lockdown. That's what will be the death of him.
I think his days are numbered, actually.
Yes, I do as well.
Sadly, because I had high hopes for him.
So how exactly has he let you down?
Well, he's just made so many blunders over the recent times.
Do you think Boris Johnson's lost the plot, or are you still a fan? Or were you ever a fan?
He never had the plot.
No.
You can't lose what you've never had.
I never thought he had the plot to begin with, in fairness, but yeah, what particular part of the plot he did have, I think he's clearly lost.
You actually think he will go anywhere?
No, I don't think he'll go anywhere, because he literally is Teflon Man, isn't he? You know, he has got that bounce back ability that just never seems to fail him.
Boris Johnson's lost the plot.
I mean, he never had it, so...
OK. How do you feel about him? Do you think Boris has lost the plot?
He lost the plot a long time ago. Like everyone else, I've been a Tory all my life. I'll never vote for them again.
Definitely.
And why? Well, go on, talk me through it. What for you?
Well, it's to do with the masks. He's not wearing masks and we have to wear them, so...
Is there anyone else you think could run the country?
I think you and I might as well do that.
I'll give it a go. I'll stand on a joint ticket. We've only just met the guy. We're going to do it. Yeah, no. Well, there we have it. The nation have spoken. Bit of a 50-50 split. I think it's fair to say that the vast majority of people thought that Boris Johnson had, in some way, shape, or form, lost the plot. Whether they thought he had it to begin with is another question. But actually, what I thought was fascinating is that most people think that he will just cling on due to a combination of poor opposition and his ability to just cling on. Back to me now in the studio. Thank you, Patrick. Well, that was I thought that was a fantastic vox pop there, and didn't Patrick do well? Right. No, I thought it was interesting, though. I'm not sure what that one was on about masks, by the way. We don't have to wear masks all the time now, at all. And if that's your singular biggest reason for not liking Boris Johnson, then I do question how you dress yourself in the morning.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting blend, and I think what that gentleman said about there's no credible opposition, there's nobody who's, I think he said, as good as them. And I do feel, well, I don't feel for Keir Starmer because it's his fault, really, that if he's not, if he can't match up to his opponents. But people don't think he's very good, do they? They think he's dull, they think he's too wooden, he's a bit vanilla, he doesn't really, he's not an inspiring...
He's an occasional table.
Yeah, and so that's the problem they have. But I do think he is a more competent individual than Boris Johnson. He would not have been Director of Public Prosecutions if he wasn't. But that's not what it necessarily takes, is it, to win those votes?
You know what Keir Starmer reminds me of? Keir Starmer reminds me of the really responsible stepdad, right? So the guy who puts in all the groundwork, he gets the kids up every single morning, he dresses them, he does all the hard work, he cooks dinner for them. You know, he plans an incredible weekend away. And then, like, their real dad just turns up.
Their real dad being Boris Johnson.
Yeah, and then, wow. Their real dad turns up just five minutes before they're about to go away, and the kids just run to him like, Daddy, yes!
Yeah, Boris Johnson is the fun...
so hollow, you know?
Oh, it's going to... No, probably shouldn't go down that road. But yeah, I see. It's a good analogy. Good analogy.
Well, apparently the next guest is ready and we're being told to stop. So there we go. gbviews@gbnews.uk is that email address there. I do think that was fascinating, though, to be fair. Basically, most people thought that he lost the plot, but also that he would cling on because that's kind of what Boris does and that Keir Starmer is so weak. Where are you on all of this? Anyway, earlier we spoke to peak performance coach and best-selling author Pete Cohen about the suggestion that, through the NHS, people could be offered therapy or exercise for poor mental health instead of being prescribed medication.
Yes, roughly 1 in 7 people in England now take antidepressants, and more than 20 million were prescribed in just 3 months last year. That's 20 million antidepressants.
Excuse me, sorry. Well, with us now to discuss this further is Rachel Kelly, who's an author and mental health advocate, often sharing her own experience of depression. Rachel, thank you very much. What do you make of these new proposals?
Well, I'm really pleased. I think that that the key point here is we're talking about mild depression. So I myself have suffered from very severe depression. I was hospitalised and I was suicidal. And I think when you're that ill, you definitely want all the medication and all the drugs that you can possibly have. But I think there's a big difference between that kind of depression, what we might call a proper clinical depression and illness, and this much more nebulous, mild depression. And I think the danger that we are in with this milder depression is that we're in danger of sort of medicalising what Freud called ordinary human unhappiness. And actually, there are problems sometimes with antidepressants, both in terms of side effects and also in terms of coming off them for this milder kind of depression. So that's why I think it's very good news. But I do think we have to be very careful and nuanced about what kind of depression we're talking about.
Could there be a danger, though, with this of the NHS saying, actually, as a first port of call, we recommend you being taken on a more active lifestyle for a little while and see how that goes. But then a lot of people probably won't have that motivation to go and do that, or they might not know where to even, where to even start with that. And so that might actually make their depression worse almost. Do you have concerns about how this kind of proposal would be administered in practice?
Yes, I think you make a good point. I mean, there are issues, for example, the recommendation from NICE here that we should have more talking therapies. And I do think that talking therapies is lots of good evidence that things like cognitive behavioural therapy, which is the therapy of choice on the NHS, we do know it's very effective. The problem we've got, as you've identified, is actually access and getting these kinds of alternative treatments. There are long waiting lists for the talking therapy, and as you also say, motivation for things like some of the exercise approaches. So, it's not to say that these other approaches can be done in a sort of casual and uncommitted way. People are going to need support with these other approaches, and that may not just be being, left to their own devices by any means. So I think you make a good point there.
Rachel, you said you're very open, as indeed you are very often actually, about the severity of the depression that you can suffer from. Do you ever wonder sometimes whether or not we've diminished a little bit of mental health? I think there was a period of time, wasn't there, where mental health almost became fashionable, right? And a lot of people, I think, were saying, oh, I've got depression, I've got depression, I've got depression. And that diminishes, I think, doesn't it? People such as yourself, for example, who clearly have very severe depression from what you said. How did that make you feel, really? Do you think that kind of watered down the mental health crisis, as it were?
Well, I think you're right. There is a serious point there of a distinction between very serious conditions. So, as I say, severe depression, psychosis, schizophrenia, what you might call the sort of less fashionable in a way, very, very serious mental health conditions. Often people suffering from lots of other very difficult things, unemployment, adverse child experiences. These people with very severe conditions, they're not often getting the help they need. They're often hard to get hold of, hard to access, and that's a sort of what we might call the sort of 4 or 5% of mental health conditions, and they don't necessarily get the help. And then there's a much wider category of this sort of what you might call almost 95%, which is the sort of anxiety, much milder depression. And as you say, it's almost like a lot of attention has gone in that big category. A lot of celebrities have talked about their own experience of anxiety and depression, and no disrespect to them. Obviously, they have experienced what they've experienced. But I think, again, there's a confusion here between this very large group, and often the answer isn't a medical approach, and too much focus on this very, very large group, which almost encompasses everybody. The latest one survey was saying 10 million people felt that they were suffering from anxiety. They can't all possibly go and get treated on the NHS. It would completely overwhelm the NHS. And we're in danger there of imagining that this very, very large group all need medical attention. And as you say, the 5% who are in a much more serious category won't necessarily get the help they need.
Well, thank you, Rachel Kelly, for joining us to discuss that, author and mental health advocate. I think it's interesting what she said there about the medicalisation of normal human emotion or normal human sadness, because, without, she said there, trying to diminish anybody who feels that they have a mental health condition or indeed does have a diagnosed mental health condition. Humans get sad, all of us get sad, all of us get anxious. So there is a range of normal human emotions. And the worry is, I suppose, going to a doctor and for medication to be too easily and too readily accessible to the millions and millions of people who will occasionally feel sad. So it's an interesting proposal that exercise and other alternatives are being recommended, which might actually be long-term healthier for you anyway.
Yeah, and there are times when you're supposed to feel sad, right? A relative dies or something like that. I mean, it's perfectly natural to feel sad there in those moments. And you don't want to necessarily go and jump to start medicating those moments, maybe. But hey, look, obviously, of course, it's very much a topic for your doctor and not for me, really. But anyway, there we go. Loads of you have been getting in touch. For people to see a psychiatrist is like trying to fly to the moon at the moment, long queues. That's an issue, massively, Hilary. Thank you for getting in touch with that. I do hope you're all OK, obviously. This lady is spot on. This is from Christina. People are unhappy. They're not listened to and cannot cope with everyday life in some respects. They need mentors. So, yes, thank you for that, Christina.
Yes, thank you. And speaking of the moon and space, on Wednesday, NASA will launch a mission to deliberately smash a spacecraft into an asteroid to try to alter its orbit. The first time in humanity this has been tried, to interfere in the gravitational moments of the solar system, which I have no idea what that means.
Well, I think this is fascinating stuff. Basically, we're going to smash something into the side of an asteroid and hope it moves.
Hope it
so that,
diverts.
as and when this inevitably happens and would end humanity, we can maybe do that. So we can do that again. Here comes a big rock, lads. Off you go. Anyway, the aim is to test drive a planetary defence system that could prevent us from going the same way as the dinosaurs, providing that the first real data about what it will take to actually deflect an Armageddon-inducing asteroid away from Earth. Well, we're joined now by Mark Thompson, science broadcaster, astronomer, author, man of many talents. Mark, is this possible? Can we move an asteroid?
Well, hopefully, yes. So the whole purpose of this mission, which is called DART, a wonderful title for the project, which is the Double Asteroid Redirection Test, is simply, as you said, to smash a spacecraft into an asteroid, which isn't posing any threat to us at the moment at all, and to see if the concept of smashing a spacecraft into an asteroid, which, if a similar one was heading towards Earth, see what it does. This is very much been done on paper before, and in theory, yes, it'll work. We're expecting the asteroid to change its velocity by about 1%, so not a lot. But what it could mean is if we can detect an asteroid early enough and hit it early enough, then we could make significant impact and redirect it away from the Earth.
How likely is this to actually happen? Because I'm sure I see headlines every few months that says an asteroid is heading towards planet Earth, but we're still all here, nothing ever seems to happen. So how likely really is it?
You know, one of the challenges that we have in working out if an asteroid is going to hit us on Earth is we need data, and one of the challenges is it takes time to capture all that data. Now, if we discover an asteroid, a new asteroid, and there are asteroids out there we've not seen before, I'm sure, and we will discover more in the future, but when we discover them, we have to take time to observe them. We can see where it is, but it takes time to work out its path. And it's only when we've done that we can actually tell where it's going to go. And that's when we get a real understanding of whether it's actually going to be a real threat to us or not.
I find it astonishing that we don't get hit by more asteroids, to be honest with you. It just seems like we're kind of constantly playing a game of roulette. Do you think, and I've always wanted to ask an expert this, right? Do you think they'd actually tell us, the powers that be, if there was an asteroid hurtling towards Earth that they knew was going to end humanity? They wouldn't tell us, would they? Be chaos.
Do you know what? It's a really interesting one, isn't it? And you know, I think it would be very difficult for them not to spread, for that information not to become public knowledge. I think eventually, yes, they would, absolutely. But one of the challenges is that, you know, the sky is accessible to everyone. There are thousands of amateur astronomers around the world that train really quite, you know, high quality telescopes on the sky, and actually sometimes amateur astronomers discover these things. So it might actually be quite difficult to cover something like that up if it ever does get discovered.
Yeah, that's nice to know, because I would like at least a couple of weeks of total lawlessness before.
You want to know a little bit, don't you? Of course you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That would be interesting, because it would be. Well, I wonder what some people would do, given the knowledge that they'd be dying in a couple of weeks. Well, we'd all be dying.
It'd look like the Purge, wouldn't it? But there are other things that have been mooted. I think Elon Musk was talking about potentially nuking it, wasn't he? I think big, strong lasers. Is that right?
Yeah, there's been so many different theories as to what we might do. You know, and actually, it might simply be there's nothing we can do at the moment. We might find as a result of this DART test that it won't have enough of an impact. So at the moment, where we are, there's not an awful lot we could do about any asteroid that's heading for the Earth. And I must stress, there's nothing out there that we know of that poses a threat to the Earth that we need to worry about. But there are other ideas, such as missiles, nuclear missiles, lasers, to try and destroy them. But the real danger there is if you've got one whacking great chunk of rock heading towards the Earth, and then you blow it up into a few hundred, maybe 1,000 pieces, then you end up with a few 100,000 pieces heading towards the Earth. And it's not necessarily going to change its course. Now, smaller pieces are less of a concern because they might burn up in the atmosphere. In fact, shooting stars are bits of rock burning up in the atmosphere, so we do see those quite regularly. So there's a number of different ideas, but at the end of the day, we just need to start testing these concepts out and see which ones provide us with the best chance.
Absolutely.
Well, Mark Thompson, thank you for joining us, science broadcaster, astronomer, and author. Really interesting stuff.
I could talk about that all day.
Did you like astronomy and were you good at science at school?
No, terrible. But the one bit of science that I was all right at was the space
Bunsen
stuff.
burner, wasn't it?
No, I used to burn myself all the time.
Yeah,
but yeah, I still got the scars actually. I thought, well, I'll tell you what, actually, that reminds me of the first time I ever got a Saturday morning detention. Yeah, I know. And it was because I grabbed a hot Bunsen burner and swore, and instead of sending me to the nurse, he wrote out a Saturday detention for me swearing in class whilst my hand was basically
I think
on
it's
fire.
what you deserved, quite frankly.
No, it was the first of many, to be fair. But anyway, there we go.
Saturday morning detentions. Now that's a controversy for the future.
Yes. Well, there you go, indeed. Actually, we're going to be talking... I'm actually rearing my ugly head yet again on GB News later this afternoon. I'm on with Gloria Di Piero. I'm filling in for Liam Halligan. He's doing his On the Money. If I was doing it, it'd be called Where's My Money? So we're not doing that. I'm now filling in. I'm going to be the Liam to Gloria's Gloria, I suppose. Yes, but anyway. So tune in for that. It'll be chaos. Yes, lots of people getting in touch. People saying, Boris Johnson, this is one of the Vox Pops I did earlier, he's bad, but he's still better than Labour. Under Labour, we wouldn't have the channel crossings because they just let people in. I'm not sure that's actually Labour policy, to be fair, Stuart, but there we go. And lots of people giving me locations of certain countries that they would like the asteroid to hit if indeed it did come to Earth, but we won't be reading those out.
Probably not best to go into that.
No.
But one of them is a country Patrick isn't a great fan of, and he was pleased about that email.
Yeah, well done. Well done, John.
Let's leave
right.
it there before it erupts into chaos here. But that's it from us here to the point. But don't go away, because up next is the briefing, as usual, with Gloria Di Piero. But first, the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hi there. High pressure remains close to the UK, so dry for most with some sunshine today. But actually there is a lot of cloud, a bit more compared to yesterday in a few places. That cloud coming in around the top of the high, especially for northern parts of the UK, but also some cloud affecting eastern and southern districts as well. So sunshine a bit more limited compared to yesterday, but still some sunny spells about the Midlands into parts of East Anglia, southern England and South Wales. Otherwise a generally cloudy picture, the cloud thick enough for a few spots of rain and drizzle for parts of North Wales, northern and western Scotland as well, similar to yesterday really. Fewer showers for the far southeast, they'll tend to remain offshore, and temperatures around average for the time of year, 8 to 10 Celsius. Now heading into the evening, and the cloud tends to sink south somewhat. Where we do keep the clearer spells, fog will form, some dense fog patches in places. Where we get the cloudier skies, it will remain a bit milder and fog and frost free. But this weather front will sink south into northern and western Scotland.